Well, I'll tell you what you don't see anymore. You don't see pizza bagels. No, you don't. When was the last time you saw a pizza bagel? I think they were called bagel bites. In the oven, they're not bad. Some people microwave that stuff. It's disgusting. I mean, just to be honest with you, they're kind of unnecessary these days. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com, and today, now that we nailed down the toast notifications and the pre-migrate script, we're going to be starting the actual package now in the V2 of the Intune Zero Touch migration, and we're going to do this by doing the new version of the Start Migrate PS1 script. Stay tuned. No one makes one with like a fresh full-size bagel. Okay, so I have my V2 Zero Touch migration folder. I'm going to open that up. And remember in the beginning, I said we were going to divide this into two scenarios, in place and hardware refresh. So we're still in place. And we've done our pre-migrate work. That was our toast sample we worked on. But now it's time to use the package here. So everything in here is going to be very similar to what was in the first version of the migration script, starting with the Start Migrate PS1, and all of our tasks and things will follow. So I'm going to make a new folder, new file in here, and I'm going to call it Start Migrate PS1. And a lot of this is going to look the same. So let's jump right in, and let's start with some basic, just some basic framework again, right? So we have the, let's see, primary migration script for Intune tenant to tenant migration. And I always usually have some more comments in the actual version, and you'll be seeing that on in the GitHub repo. I'm going to go ahead and hopefully update this in real time here. That's all there. Actually, let's put a must run as system context. All right, so what are we doing now in the script, right? So we're going to go ahead and do our usual. Okay, so that's going to be... So the first part is going to be local files and logging. Okay. Okay. Just copy that whole thing. All right, the second part of this is going to be authenticating to graph and blob storage, because we are gonna continue to take a peek in there, although it's mostly going to be verification. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to authenticate to MS graph and blob storage. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to import values from the XML. Get XML values. We're going to set the required policy. Okay. And then we're going to do a data migration check. Data migration check. Okay, we are going to remove previous enrollment artifacts. So if you were enrolled in an Intune tenant, if you were, Azure AD joined already, we're going to get rid of that stuff. So remove previous enrollment artifacts. Okay. Then we are going to leave Azure domain and Intune. We'll talk about that a little later, because the script's been modified to work with hybrid join devices as well. We set our post-migration tasks. So actually, you know what? I think this will be the time where we throw our toast notification. We're going to put it right here. Toast notification. Okay. Now we're going to set our post-migration tasks. Okay. Join the new tenant. And lastly, we delete objects and reboot. Delete objects and reboot. Okay, excellent. So what does this look like? Let's get started today. Let's see if we can go all the way up to we can go up to the policies here. Local files and logging. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my error action preference, and that'll be silently continue. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my local path just like before, and this will be C program data Intune migration. And we are going to check for it, even though if we're following this, this should have been done with the pre-migration script, so it should be here. Okay, if test path local path does not come back good, we make it local path. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to create the array for our package files. And these are all the tasks and scripts. And this is where we would list everything out that we're doing. However, what we're going to do this time though is we are going to pull these down from blob storage. We're not going to store them locally. That's going to make this a lot easier to maintain. Okay, so this used to be an array where we listed all the files. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to package files. We are going to leave it empty, and we're going to put a little note, invoke from blob storage. And we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that later because I also want to show you how to store things up there. Okay. All right. Authenticating to MS Graph and Blob is going to be exactly how we did it before. So when I go to pre-migrate, remember this was our original script. So we can take the same exact stuff we used to join to tenant A. It's still that we're not joining to tenant B, or we're not authenticating to tenant B. We're still using this. So I can copy this right in under authenticate to MS Graph and blob storage. Now, when we go back to look at the next part of this, connect to blob storage, we don't need all this. I mean, you essentially could have it in there, but you shouldn't be running this unless the other one completed. So because these modules are already there, we're going to be fine. We're going to be good to go. We could just leave those alone. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect to the blob storage. Let's see, blob storage. And we're going to have a container called package files. And that'll be where we keep everything. So actually, we are going to move this down to here, since we're going to invoke those after we connect to blob. Okay, a few more things we actually didn't get to that we're going to do now is we're going to set our log. Well, first we need the install flag. Local path installed. .text. New item is going to be install flag force, and then we are going to set content path install flag. The value can simply be package installed. That's for Intune. Detection rule for Intune. Now we can start logging. Okay, so we're gonna start logging. start transcripts. Path is going to be local path migration log. So we're going to have a pre-migration, a post, pre-migration, migration, and post-migration log by the end of this. So now we'll just verify our context and start logging. So we'll say write host running as, am I? Oh. Who am I? Come on. Right hosts. Okay, great. Okay, so we've authenticated, we've connected to blob storage, we're invoking our package files. Now we got to get the XML values. So if you remember at the end of pre-migrate, right, everything was sent to, all of our XML data was sent here. Local path XML file, we call it config.xml, and it's still going to be there, right? It should be in the exact same place. So we're going to go pull some of that back. So first, let's get the file. So XML, that lets the variable know to expect XML data. So our XML file equals get content path local path config.xml. Okay. So now the main config of that is going to be XML file dot config. Now what we'll do is we're going to pull in, we need 4 values. Intune ID, we need the autopilot ID, the migrate method ID, and we need the locations. So these are all just going to be nodes of the config variable. So config Intune ID. Config autopilot. Come on. This is going to be config migrate method. And now for locations, it's going to be config locations, but then we have to specify the individual location within each one. And that'll actually form an array. Okay. So let's host there. Write host getting XML data from local path config.xml. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, next thing we're going to do is set the required policy. Basically on the PC, depending on its origin state, we need 2 policies to make sure that we're going to be able to migrate correctly. So the first one is going to be the Microsoft account creation. That has to be on. So ensure MS account creation policy is enabled. Okay, we're going to do this with the registry. So we're going to do a reg path, HKLM, software, Microsoft policy manager, current device, accounts. The name is going to be allow Microsoft account connection, and the value needs to be 1. So we get the current value, current fetch value equals get item property, path, well, we know the path, name, we know the name, error action, silently continue. If the current registry value is equal to value, then we just move along. Write hosts, registry is set, is already set to value. If not, Now we go ahead and we change it. Right host, setting MDM registry value to value. Okay, and that'll be a regex command. Add. That's going to be the reg path. Add reg x path. V is going to be reg name. Type is a reg d word. And the value is a that should just be value. We force that and we outhost. All right, that takes care of that. And the last policy is turning off the last sign-in display. That's how we get the other user to be forced after the first reboot. So only show other user option after reboot. Okay. Right host, turning off last signed in user display. Okay, and we can do a try catch here. So we'll do a set item property path HKLM software Microsoft Windows current version policies system. The name will be don't display last username. It's not really a string. Here's one type keyword force. We could use reg for this too, but this way we have options. Right host enabled interactive logon policy. Okay, and our catch will fail that. Right host failed to enable policy. Okay, so what is the data migration check, which is the next thing? What does that mean? What are we actually looking at? Right, all that fun stuff. So let me make some space. So the idea here is we are verifying. So notice we pulled out our migrate method in the config from the XML config.migrate method. And if you recall, in here, that variable, which was right up in here in the pre-migrate, was set based on how we were migrating the data, right? So you have one of three approaches here. If we're storing the data on some temp space on the disk, we call that local. If we're leveraging blob storage, it's called blob. And if we can't do the data, it's NA. So we're going to take the same approach here and just kind of check to make sure things are the way they are, right? So let's go ahead and begin the check. So we are saying right host checking migration readiness. So what we'll do is we'll start by saying if migrate method, did I say ID? Oh, I did. That does not need to be ID. That could simply be migrate method. Look at me. Who caught that, I wonder? How many of you did? If migrate method is equal to local, okay, then what we'll do is we'll call that out. Right host migration method is local. Verifying staged content in public folder. Okay, so that pretty much means we're saying for each location in locations. Locations. We're gonna just check. So we'll say public path equals C users public temp location. If test path public path right host, yep, right host, public path is staged and ready for migration. Else right host public path is not found. Now we have our broader else if. So our else if migrate method is equal to blob. We can actually close that so we have some more room here. Just tighten that up. Okay. At this point, we would say, oh, you know what? There's one more value we have to pull out. We have to pull out the GUID. GUID. In case we need that. So we'll say blob container is equal to GUID, and then blob exists will be get az storage container, context is context, and we're going to find the container where the object name equals blob container, because in this case it would be the GUID. So basically what we're doing here is, if you remember, if we're storing data in the blob, we're creating a container that has the GUID of the record, and we're basically saying, hey, okay, if your migrate method is blob, you should have one of these. So go get the storage container from that blob account where the name of the container is equal to the GUID. If it's not there, well, here, let's start with if it is there. If it's not equal to null, so if something comes back, then we write host blob storage is ready for migration. Might be a better way to word that. Else we can just say write host blob storage is not ready. And then finally, in the last part of our broader statement, we can just do write host. So if it's not local or blob, user data will not be migrated. So why are we doing this here? Because it's almost too late to do anything, but the reality is we need to at least know if that's the case. So I think it's important to have a log of it here, just to see what happened, right? Because the reality is we should be ready to go by this point. So, all right, we're going to stop there after the data migration check. There's still a little bit more to go in the start migrate PS1. We should be able to do this in 2 parts. So if that was part 1, then I suppose it's just part 2. Later.
1, 2